Chapter 29 of The Mystery of the Four Fingers. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Mystery of the Four Fingers by Fred M. White. Chapter 29. The Mortal Coil. It cannot be said that Gurdon's announcement caused any particular sensation. To all those who knew anything about the inner history of the Four-Finger Mine, the conclusion appeared to be perfectly logical. It was Venner who mentioned the secret of the mine before anybody had even the curiosity to ask to see the paper.
"Do you think that this has been the outcome of anything that Zary did?"
he asked Le Fenu.
"You see, as far as I am concerned, I was only in the mine once or twice, and before your father's death my knowledge of its romantic history was limited. I can't altogether bring myself to believe that the mine was haunted by avenging spirits and all that kind of thing. In this 20th century of ours, one is naturally very cynical about such matters." "I really cannot tell you," Le Fenu replied. "Of course, there must be human agency afoot. Zary always declared that he was the last of his tribe, and when he died the secret of the mine would belong to our family alone. As a matter of fact, my father died first, so that Zary alone is in possession of the strange secret of that dread place. One thing is very certain. It was none of us who took vengeance on the Dutchman who murdered my father. Who was responsible for that, I do not know. Still, there was something very terrible and awe-striking about the way in which the Dutchman's fingers returned to his wife, one by one. I should like to have known, also, how Fenwick lost his fingers. But Zary would never tell me. I think he professed that it had been done through the agency of the spirits of his departed ancestors, who guarded the mine. Mind you, I don't say that it is impossible, for we are beginning to understand that there are hidden forces in nature which till quite recently were a sealed book to us. It is no use speculating about the matter, because we shall never know. Zary has always been fond of us, but I have a feeling now that we shall never see him again. I believe he came to England on purpose to accomplish the death of Mark Fenwick, and you may rely upon it that he will vanish now without making any further sign." "That is more than possible," Gurdon said thoughtfully. "But so far as I can judge from what this paper says, Fenwick's death seems to have been prosaic enough. Perhaps I had better read you the account in the newspaper." Without waiting for any further permission, Gurdon began to read aloud. "Strange suicide in the Channel. Death of Mr. Mark Fenwick. Late this afternoon the barque British Queen put back into the port of London with the schooner Red Cross in tow. It appears that the barque in question was bound for the River Plate, and had dropped down the river with the morning tide. Outside the mouth of the Thames she had encountered exceedingly squally weather, so much so that she had lost a considerable amount of running gear owing to the gusty and uncertain condition of the wind. About 11 o'clock in the morning an extra violent squall struck the vessel, and the skipper, Luther Jones, decided to put back again and wait till the next tide. It was at this point that the Red Cross was sighted making signals of distress. At considerable hazard to himself and his crew, the skipper of the British Queen managed to get the schooner in tow and worked her up the river on a short sail. This in itself is simply an incident illustrating the perils of the sea, and merely leads up to the dramatic events which follow. It appears, according to Captain Jones's statement, that very early this morning a man called upon him in a public-house and demanded to know what he would require for a passage to the River Plate. Satisfactory terms having been arranged, the stranger came aboard the British Queen and immediately repaired to his bunk. So far as the captain could see, his passenger was exceedingly reticent and desirous of avoiding publicity. In fact, the skipper of the British Queen put him down as a fugitive from justice. All the same, he asked no questions. Presumably he had been well content to hold his tongue in return for a liberal fee in the way of passage money. So far as Captain Jones knows, his passenger slept comfortably enough, and it is quite evident that he partook of breakfast in the morning. What happened subsequently, it is somewhat difficult to say, for Captain Jones was busy on his own deck looking after the safety of his ship. These events took place shortly before the Red Cross was sighted. It was at this time that Captain Jones believes that he heard a shrill scream coming from the cabin, as if his passenger had met with an accident, or had been frightened by something out of the common. He came on deck a moment later, looking like a man who had developed a dangerous mania. He seemed to be flying from some unseen terror, and indeed gave every indication suggestive of the conclusion that he was suffering from a severe attack of delirium tremens. Captain Jones does not share this view, though it is generally accepted by his crew. Before anybody could interfere or stretch out a hand to detain the unfortunate man, he had reached the side of the vessel and thrown himself into the tremendous sea that was running at the time. It was absolutely out of the question to make any attempt to save him, though naturally Captain Jones did what he could. Then occurred one of the strange things which so frequently happen at sea.
5 minutes later, a great wave breaking over the foredeck cast some black object at the feet of Captain Jones, which object turned out to be the body of the unhappy suicide. The man was quite dead. Indeed, he had sustained enough bodily injuries to cause death, without taking drowning into consideration. As before stated, Captain Jones came in contact with the Red Cross a little later, and on reaching the safety of the pool he immediately communicated with the police, who took possession of the body of the suicide. On Scotland Yard being communicated with, a detective was sent down and immediately recognized the body as that of Mr. Mark Fenwick, the American millionaire. No doubt is entertained that the police officer is right, as Mr. Fenwick is well known to thousands of people in London, not only on account of his wealth, but owing also to his remarkable personal appearance. At the present moment, the body lies in a public-house by the side of the Thames, and an inquest will be held in the morning. Later. Since going to press, we hear that startling developments are expected in the matter of the suicide of Mr. Mark Fenwick. On excellent authority, we are informed that the police hold a warrant for the arrest of Fenwick and others on a series of criminal charges, among which that of uttering counterfeit coin is not the least prominent. If these facts prove to be correct, it will be easy to see why Mr. Fenwick was attempting to leave the country in fugitive fashion. Further details will appear in a later edition. "That is the whole of the story," Gurdon said when he had concluded. "On the whole, I should say that Mark Fenwick is very well out of it. He has had a pretty fair innings, but fate has been too strong for him in the long run. It is just as well, too, that he has escaped his punishment. I mean, for your sakes, more than anything else. If that man had been put upon his trial, a charge of murder would have been added sooner or later, and you would all have been dragged from police court to criminal court to give evidence over and over again. In fact, you would have been the centre of an unpleasant amount of vulgar curiosity. As it is, the inquest will be more or less of a formal affair, and the public will never know that Fenwick has been anything more than a common swindler." Venner was emphatically of the same view. Personally, he was exceedingly glad to think that the knot had been cut in this fashion, and that the unpleasant business was ended. He discussed the matter thoughtfully with Gurdon, as he and the latter walked in the direction of his rooms, for he had refused to spend the night at Merton Grange, though Vera, of necessity, had arranged to stay there. "I suppose one ought to be thankful," he said, "that matters are no worse. Still, at the same time, I must confess that I should like to have a few words with Zary. I wonder if we could get him to take us back to Mexico with a view to exploring the Four Finger Mine. After all said and done, it seems a pity that that rich treasure house should be lost to the world." "Better leave it alone," Gurdon said. "It makes me creep when I think of it. All the same, I am with you in one thing. I should certainly like to see Zary again." Gurdon and his companion were destined to have their wish gratified sooner than they had expected. They let themselves into the farmhouse where they were staying, and Venner turned up the lamp in the big rambling sitting-room. There, half asleep in a chair before the fire, sat the very man whom they had been discussing. He appeared to be heavy with sleep. His melancholy eyes opened slowly as he turned to the newcomers. "You have been thinking about me," he said. "You have been wondering what had become of me. We are strangers, and yet we are not strangers. Mr. Venner is known to me, and Mr. Venner's wife also. I was aware that my dear young mistress was his wife when it was still a secret to everybody else. You are puzzled and mystified over the death of Mark Fenwick. Mr. Gurdon has been reading an account to you from a newspaper." "You are certainly a very remarkable man," Gurdon said. "As a matter of fact, that is exactly what I have been doing. But tell me, Zary, how did you know?" "You have a great poet," Zary said, calmly and deliberately. "He was one of the noblest philosophers of his time. I have read him. I hope to read him again many times. His name is Shakespeare, and he says, quote, 'There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy.' Unquote. Gentlemen, that is so, as you would know if you possessed the powers I do. But I could not explain, you would not understand, for your minds are different from mine. I am going away. I shall never see my dear friends again. For the last time we have met. And because I could not endure a formal parting, I have come to you to give them all a message from me. It is only this, that I shall never cease to think of them wherever I may be, but I need not dwell upon that. As to Fenwick, I did not design that he should die so peaceful a death. I had gauged his mind incorrectly. I had goaded him into a pitch of terror which drove him over the borderland and destroyed his reason. Therefore, he committed suicide, and so he is finished with." There was a pause for some time, until it became evident that Zary had no more to say. He rose to his feet, and was advancing in the direction of the door when Gurdon stopped him. "Pardon me," the latter said, "but like most ordinary men, I am by no means devoid of my fair share of curiosity. What is going to be done in the matter of the Four-Finger Mine?" Zary's large, round eyes seemed to emit flashes of light. His face had grown hard and white like that of a statue. "Well," he demanded, "what about the mine?" "Why, you see, it practically belongs to Mr. Le Fenu's children," Gurdon said, "in which case it should prove an exceedingly valuable property." "The mine belongs to us. It belongs to me," Zary cried. "I am the last of my tribe, and the secret shall die with me. Man, do you suppose that happiness lies in the mere accumulation of money? I tell you that the thing is a curse, one of the greatest curses that ever God laid on humanity. To hundreds and thousands of us, this life of ours on earth is a veritable hell through the greed for gold. Of all the wars that have brought pain and suffering to humanity, none has done a tithe of the harm wrought by the incessant battle for the yellow metal which you call gold. If there had been no such thing on earth, the tribe to which I belong would today walk as gods amongst ordinary men. No, I shall do nothing to pander to this disease. When I die, the secret of the mine perishes with me. Never more will man work there, as long as I have the health and strength to prevent it." The latter part of Zary's speech had sunk almost to a whisper. He made a profound bow to Venner and Gurdon, then left the room softly. He seemed to vanish, almost like the spirit of one of his departed ancestors, and his place knew him no more. "Curious man," Gurdon said thoughtfully. "Very quiet and gentle, as a rule, but not the kind of person you would care to have as a foe. I have a very strong feeling that none of us will ever see Felix Zary again. Now, don't you think we can begin to forget all about this kind of thing? Surely we have had enough horrors and mysteries, and I can only wonder at the way in which those girls have borne up against all their troubles. Tell me, what are you going to do? I mean, as to your future." "Upon my word, I really haven't given it a thought," Venner said. "It is not very often that a man has the unique experience of being married 3 years without a honeymoon, and without more than half an hour in his wife's company. You can but feebly guess, my dear fellow, how terribly I have suffered during the time to which I refer. Still, I trusted my wife implicitly, though all the dictates of common sense were against me, and I am sincerely and heartily glad now that I took the line I did. As soon as possible, I intend to take Vera away for a long tour on the continent. When I come back, I shall have the old house done up again, and, I suppose, settle down to the life of a country gentleman. But, of course, I can't do anything till Beth's future is settled. I suppose, for the present, she will go back again to Le Fenu's doctor friends, pending her marriage with Charles Evors." "The programme is all right," Gurdon said, "but suppose Lord Merton objects to the arrangement?" "I don't fancy he will do that, from what I hear," Venner said. "All the Evors have been wild in their youth, and the present lord is no exception to the rule. Depend upon it, he will be very glad to have his son back again, happily married and eager to become domesticated. Besides, from what I understand from Vera, her father worked the Four-Finger Mine to considerable advantage during his lifetime, and Beth is something quite considerable in the way of an heiress. On the whole, I am not disposed to worry. Now let us have one quiet cigar, and then go to bed like a pair of average, respectable citizens." Chapter 29